First, let me introduce myself. My name is Bailey Parker. I am the Communications Director at the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. You've been here before, you've heard it a billion times. I'm not an attorney. You don't want legal advice from me. This presentation is not meant to serve as a substitute for reading the various laws discussed, because we are going to talk about a couple of laws, or seeking legal counsel for yourself. The presentation merely serves as an introduction and overview of this topic. Medical debt statistics. There's a lot of medical debt. This graphic came from Kaiser. Kaiser is one of the most well-respected and well-known medical groups. They have hospitals, but they do a lot of research and things like that. Nearly 1 in 10 adults nationwide owes at least $250 in medical debt. That's about 23 million people who have medical debt, totaling hundreds of billions of dollars. Their numbers came from 2019 when they did some research. Now, medical debt estimates for the United States are all over the place. The most recent one from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was at 88 billion. They said they estimated as of July 2021, there's about $88 billion of medical debt in the United States. Kaiser is saying that they see upwards of $144 billion. Now, they're estimating debt not just on credit reports, but they're also estimating debt that people have put on credit cards, other ways that they've paid that still equates to debt. But we're talking tens of billions of dollars here, right? So we're not just talking about a couple million. There is a lot in medical debt in the United States. So people's ages 35 to 49 or 50 to 64 are more likely to report medical debt than any other adults. The reasoning behind that is, or at least the guess, the theory, is that these people are in age groups where they're not young and they're not youthful and healthy like they used to be, and they may actually have young children who they have medical expenses for now, or they're getting a little bit older and they're having more health issues than usual, but they're underneath that cutoff for Medicaid, Medicare, if they qualify. So these age ranges, basically 35 to 64, are more likely to report debt than anyone else. Larger amounts of people in bad health, poor health, so 21% of them, and living with a disability report medical debt. This makes sense. If you have poor health, you're most likely having to go to the doctor a lot more, maybe having more expensive procedures. So you're more likely to report medical debt. And this is what I mentioned earlier. As of June of last year, Americans estimated a collective medical debt of about 88 billion. Kaiser says 144, but it's just a lot of money in general. So overdue bills, healthcare provider sent it to collections. So this is before the credit reporting agencies put out their announcement a couple months ago. This is how medical debt collection happened before July 1 of this year. So we're not there yet. When July 1 kicks in, there's going to be some additional protections, if you want to use that word, or changes that happen. So this is what's happening right now. The collection agency may report that information to credit agencies after a 6-month period or 180 days specifically. That's if a healthcare provider has sent it to collections. I want to say a lot of healthcare providers, the majority of them, actually don't send bills to collections, but some do. Example, I recently got a notice from Doctor's Care because we had done a visit for my son who had strep throat over the internet thing on the phone. And we've got 2 young kids and we're just busy. We're busy, nothing, and mail comes in. We sometimes forget that a bill came in and we don't pay it off immediately like we should. So I got a notification saying, hey, by the way, we're going to send your $50 that you owe to Doctor's Care to collections if you don't pay it within the next 15 days. So that's an example of when something would get sent to collections. You're going to receive a notice from that healthcare provider if it is going to be sent to collections, but the majority of healthcare providers don't actually even send debt to collections. A lot of those are nonprofit organizations. Once it's on your credit report, it can negatively affect your credit score. So if you're continuing to not pay this medical debt and collectors are attempting to get it from you for over that 6-month period, they report it to TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian, it can negatively affect your credit score. So know that this has real life impact, not just on your wallet, but on your future ability to borrow money. If you pay the bill in full, it remains on your credit report for 7 years. That's the statute of limitations usually. It could stay on there for longer than 7 years by mistake. So the credit reporting agencies may just not take it off because they missed the 7-year deadline. We tell consumers all the time, if that's the case, you have something that's been on there other than bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is 10 years. But if it's the 7-year timeline and it's been on there for longer than 7 years, you can call the credit reporting agency and let them know, and they'll usually take it off if it's accurate, the information you're telling them. But it will stay on there even if you pay it in full. It'll show as a collections account and that you paid in full, but it still could affect you negatively if you go and attempt to get a loan. That loan provider may say, they had some debt that went to collections. Yeah, they paid it, but it took them this long. Or should we give them a different interest rating? So it could influence your interest rates or ability to get a loan in the future. So here are the changes. There's really only a few to talk about, but there's some misconceptions here. Based on headlines, we as a society have a tendency to not read articles. I know I'm guilty of it. We see the headline and we're like, wow, I know so much from this headline, I don't need to read the rest. I'm blaming myself of doing this too, because we're all in a hurry, and also headlines are the attention grabbers, and that's what we're going to remember, right? So here are some headlines that may misconstrue what the changes to medical debt reporting actually are. So this one says credit reporting agencies will remove medical debt from credit reports. That's all it says. How changes in medical debt reporting could raise your credit score this summer. Well, that's kind of attention grabbing. I want to know if my credit score is going to get raised this summer. And medical debt soon will be removed from credit reports. So I, as a consumer, might think, great, all of my medical debt's going to be gone from my credit report, even if I've paid it or not. Here's the reality. So the misconception is that all medical debt is removed from your credit report. I've heard this from multiple consumers who I've spoken to, when we've been traveling around, or even questions on webinars or emails that we've received, is that, well, all medical debt is going to be removed from your credit report. That's not true. Not all medical debt is going to be removed. The reality is all paid collections accounts will be removed from credit reports starting on July 1 of this year. So if you've paid a medical debt that's been on your credit reports, that will be removed. It's not going to have to sit there until the 7 years of statute of limitations from that last payment, because that's how the statute of limitations works. If you make a payment on that account, it renews the statute of limitations. So that last payment you made to close it out, 7 years from that point. It's not from when the account was opened, just as a little tidbit, because that's another common misconception about the reporting times. So all paid collections will be removed, whether or not they're under or over the 7 years. Unpaid bills, the reporting time is extended to 1 year. So I spoke about that 6-month time frame that the debt collectors after 6 months can report it to TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Now it will be extended to 1 year. An entire 365 days has to pass to give you an opportunity to pay it before they can report it to the national credit reporting agencies. This won't take effect until the end of this year, so the beginning of next. Reason being, the rest of this goes into effect July 1. If you're adding an additional 6 months, it'll be the beginning of next year. So that really won't start until 2023. Starting in 2023, information of medical collections accounts $500 or less will not be included on credit reports. So even if a debt collector, say, I remember getting a collections mail. I worked at a hospital when I was living in Utah. I worked at a hospital, and I got a letter in the mail from the hospital I worked at, weirdly enough. And they said they had sent my debt to collections for 93 cents. Wow. The postage for the mail probably cost more than that bill itself did. I paid the 93 cents off, so it didn't go to collections. But let's say we were in a situation where that debt collector really wanted to get that 93 cents. Even if he were to report it to the credit reporting agencies in 2023, it wouldn't be put on my credit report. So just 93 cents. That's one of my fondest memories. But yes, anything $500 or under will not be included on credit reports. So if you still haven't paid it, it's not going to be on there if it's under there. The reason being, they say 70% of medical debt that is unpaid, you saw that number earlier, is about $250. So they're estimating the majority of medical debt is under that 500 mark, which will hopefully be a positive effect for the majority of Americans who have some type of medical debt. They know that a very small portion of individuals who have medical debt share a majority of that debt. So it's like nine of the 10 people only owe $250 each, and then one person owes $1 million. They know the smallest amount of people owe the most. And that's because of, really expensive, cancer can be extremely expensive, very particular long-term treatments. So we know that the majority of Americans have less than $500 of debt. So that will be a positive change for those individuals. Now, you need to check your credit report. How are you going to do that? Because a lot of times you'll get calls from debt collectors and they say you have a debt, and you're thinking, do I have a debt? I don't know. That 93 cents that I got that debt collector letter for, I had no clue that I owed 93 cents. I would have paid it if I knew about it, right? So how do you know if you have some sort of debt? Please check your credit report. There's so many reasons to check your credit report, but we're just talking about debts here right now. Go to annualcreditreport.com. The reason we're going to tell you to go here instead of anywhere else is because it's authorized by federal law to not sell your information to third-party marketers. So if you're using other people, maybe very well-marketed companies, might rhyme with Shreddit, Sharma. If you're using companies like that, anyone other than here, in their terms and conditions, if you were to read those, you would understand that you are basically giving them the ability to sell your information to other marketers. A lot of times they're selling them to credit card providers, credit card companies, insurance companies, so they can pre-qualify you for credit cards and insurance rates and loans and whatever else. So just know it's not necessarily if you don't like getting more mail and more offers, then this is a great place to go. They're not going to do anything with your information. They're not going to save it. This is a safe place to put your information in. Another thing I want to put in as a reminder, if you are trying to get your credit report from anyone, doesn't matter if it's from annualcreditreport.com or you're going directly to Equifax or Experian or TransUnion, you are going to have to give over your social security number. A lot of people get nervous about that. They think, well, why do I have to give that over? Well, they have to pull your information. They have to make sure you are who you say you are. And also your credit report is under your social security number. That's how it is identified. So you will have to give over that number in order to get your credit report. One great thing is you can get one free report from each of the major credit reporting agencies every single week until the end of this year. You don't need to check your credit report every week. That might be a little bit overkill, but if you wanted to, you technically could. Before the pandemic, they started this deal. They started this offer at the beginning of the pandemic for people who had lost their jobs, who were looking for jobs, who were just, there was a lot of fraud that was happening. They started this at the beginning of the pandemic and they've continued it. Before this offer, it's one free credit report from each of the credit reporting agencies a year. There are some other situations where you could get more, like placing a fraud alert gets you an additional credit report from each of the agencies. And there's, if you lose your job or are denied credit, you could get another credit report. But just know until the end of this year, you can look at your credit report pretty much as you want. And also, if you have a credit card, you most likely can look at your credit report whenever you want. It's not your official credit report, but it's an estimation of your credit report that your credit card company is giving you because you're a customer. So that's an option too. It does not contain a credit score. So your official credit report that you're getting from either annualcreditreport.com or directly from the national credit reporting agencies do not have scores with them. You have to pay for scores. I think it's a maximum $12.50 charge, so $12.50 each time you want to get your official score. Look, we could go. I have full hour presentations just on credit reports and scores alone. So we're not going to get into the details of why it doesn't include the score or why you have to pay for it separate from the credit report. But if you're interested in that information, we have that on our website too. So what should you look at on your credit report? So I've attached this credit reports guide. I've given multiple webinars and presentations on this guide alone. And we have something at the very back. It's attached to this webinar, just reminding you again. At the very back, we have a checklist of things that you should be checking off. The reason this is important for medical debt is you should be going through and making sure everything is yours and everything is up to date. You want to make sure all of your payments are on there if you have been making payments. If you've made the last payment and it should be closed and shown as paid in full and it hasn't been updated for whatever reason, you need to know of those things, because those little errors, they might just be errors. It might not be fraud. It could just be a regular error that could affect your ability to qualify for a credit card or a loan, right? So a closed paid in full loan looks a lot better than an open not paid in full loan, right? So these are the things to look for when you're looking at your credit report. Again, you don't need to write any of this down. It's in the handouts. But you always want to make sure all your information is correct. Your name, your social security number, your current addresses and previous addresses, your phone numbers, all of that private identifying information. Also, do they have any previous names listed for you? What names are on the credit report? Is the employment history accurate? Because your employment history is on there. Is the public information section, so the public record information, correct? If you have any tax liens, that information is going to be on there also. So you want to make sure everything is yours. All of your payments are accounted for. If accounts are closed and are open but should be closed, go through that with a fine-tooth comb. You should be doing this at least once a year. That way, you know exactly what's going on and you can identify fraud the moment it happens. The earlier you can identify fraud, the better. The earlier you catch it, the easier it is to fix. The longer it sits on your credit report, it's almost like it gives it a little bit more validity, even though it's not. So some other medical debt protections to think about. So the No Surprises Act was enacted at the beginning of this year. This is protection against surprise medical bills. Well, what is a surprise medical bill? So here's an example. I have health insurance and I went to a hospital to receive emergency care, and I didn't realize that it was an out-of-network provider. My health insurance may not cover the entire out-of-network cost. So I'm going to have to pay the difference, right? This leaves me with potentially higher costs than if I got care from an in-network provider or facility. And then on top of any of those out-of-network costs that I might owe because my insurance company didn't cover it all, the out-of-network provider could bill you for the difference, and there could be additional billing there. This is called balance billing. An unexpected balance bill from an out-of-network provider is called the surprise medical bill. So you get your in-network, your insurance bills you. You think that's it, right? I go to the hospital, don't realize it's out of network, go home 2 months later, get a bill from my insurance saying, hey, we've covered this amount. It was out of network, so it's a lot more expensive than it should have been. And then 2 months later, I get another bill directly from the hospital, and I didn't expect that because I already received another bill. That is a surprise medical bill. So in the No Surprises Act, here are some rules, and this is new as of this year. If you have health insurance, it bans surprise bills for most emergency services, even if you get them from out-of-network providers and without approval beforehand, so prior authorization. It bans out-of-network cost sharing, so like out-of-network co-insurance or co-payments for most emergency and some non-emergency services. You can't be charged more than an in-network cost sharing for these services. Continued, if you have health insurance, it bans out-of-network charges and balance bills for certain additional services like anesthesiology and radiology. Those are often additional charges. I know, like example, when I had a baby and an anesthesiologist was there, I got a bill from the hospital for my baby's delivery, and then I got a separate bill from the anesthesiologist. And that was a fun. I was like, oh, well, I think I owe this many thousand, and then a month later I get another couple $1,000 bill from a different guy. So that's an example of how an additional service could be charged. But this bans out-of-network charges and balance bills from these additional services furnished by the out-of-network providers as part of the patient's visit. It requires that healthcare providers and facilities give you an easy to understand notice explaining the applicable billing protections and who to contact if you have concerns. So basically, it requires healthcare providers to give you contact information, clearly explain what's going on, and if a provider or facility has violated the protections, and that the patient must consent to waive the billing protections. So beforehand, right? You must receive a notice of and consent to be balance billed by an out-of-network provider. So you need to say, okay, I know what I'm getting into. I know I'm going to get provided by an I'm going to get provided a bill separately from an anesthesiologist. And then for the No Surprises Act, if you don't have health insurance, there's only a couple of things here. If you don't have insurance or you self-pay for care, in most cases, the new rules require that healthcare providers give you a good faith estimate. So then this is before you receive the care. They have to give you a good faith estimate of, okay, you need to get an x-ray. You don't have health insurance. You're going to be paying for this out of pocket. I need to give you an estimate of $1,000. I don't know if that's how much an x-ray costs. Sounds right. But I'm going to charge you $1,000 for this x-ray. You know that this is what you're going to have to pay. They have to give you a good faith estimate. And then for services that are provided in 2022, because all of these protections started in 2022, you can dispute a medical bill if the final charges come in and it's at least $400 higher than that good faith estimate that they give you. And then you can file that claim within 120 days of the date of your bill. For more information, because this is a whole other thing from the credit reporting, but I just wanted to give you some additional medical debt protections that were enacted this year. If you want more information about surprise medical bills, all of this information is from cms.gov. And you can click on this link when you download the slides. So basic debt collection rules, and again, these are basic. We're not going into the nitty-gritty details here, but I just want to let you know the basic things We have an entire presentation alone on debt collection rules and law. So debt collectors can contact you only about valid debts that you owe. They cannot contact you about debt that isn't yours and that you don't owe. You have the right to ask a debt collector to verify that the debt is yours and that you owe it. So we've heard some complaints in the past from people saying, I asked for verification and they refused to give me verification. So you have the right to get verification from that debt collector to see if it's actually yours. They cannot call more than 7 times within a 7-day period. Or if they actually, within a 7-day period, talk to you, they speak with you directly about the debt, they can only call you once. They can't keep calling you to keep talking to you about it. But if you don't answer and they don't get in contact with you, they can't call more than 7 times within a 7-day period. We will be holding a Debt Collection Basics Wednesday webinar on August 24th. I know that's way out there. But one of our attorneys will be going over the debt collection basics for consumers, what to know, what your rights and responsibilities are when it comes to debt collectors, because there are some very specific rules about debt collectors in general, not just about medical debt, even though that falls underneath debt collection, just about debt collection in general. And if you can't pay your bills, contact your health insurance company or medical provider as soon as possible. Don't just let it sit there. I know I found myself in the past seeing huge medical bills come in, and I want to avoid it. I know I can't pay it in full, so I'm just going to put it off as long as I can. Don't do that. Call your insurance company to either ask for an explanation of benefits, really what are all of these charges, why am I paying this much, and then call the medical provider too. Contact your state and local social services to see if there's any help based on your income bracket, because if you're in a lower income bracket, you may qualify for some additional help or debt cancellation. Negotiate. Not a lot of people know that you can actually negotiate with your healthcare provider or ask about payment plans. So the majority of nonprofit, well, actually all nonprofit hospitals are required by law to offer financial assistance programs. That includes payment plans. So after I had my son the first time, he was a NICU baby, so that was a very big bill. Even though we did have insurance, it still was a large bill. And we were a young, newly married couple. My husband was still in school. I didn't have a ton of extra cash lying around to pay thousands of dollars for a NICU stay. So the hospital that I had my son in was a nonprofit, and they had payment plans. And because of that payment plan, we were able to do something we could afford. That way we could actually pay it off. And even then there were a couple of times where, okay, this $100 a month or whatever we had set up, we can't pay it this month. I'd call the hospital and say, I can pay $50 of it this month. Can I just do that? And they say, yeah. They'd redo it for me, and we would go forward from that point. So negotiate, call your healthcare providers. A lot of these, even creditors in general, are just looking to see that you're willing to make some type of payment. And if it's if it means anything to you, that first missed payment on a bill, there's a misconception that, okay, my credit score, say I'm here, like at 650. I'm at 650, I'm cruising along, and I can't pay my first bill ever. Well, the first bill shouldn't hurt me that much. A lot of people think it's just like a slow downgrade. The more you don't pay your bills, the more your credit score goes down. It's actually that first missed payment that hits you the most. So you're cruising along and then you take a deep dive. So you could go from 650, depending on what your missed payment is for, you could go from 650 to 550 in an instant, just from one missed payment. So please call your creditors, call your healthcare providers. The majority of providers will be willing to work with you. I'm sure there's going to be an instance where there's a not so nice healthcare provider who wouldn't be willing to work with you, but the majority are. So those payment plans, that's a plant, payment plans are very helpful. And here's a tip. If you know you're going to have a medical procedure in advance, Find out what your insurance is going to cover. So call your insurance company beforehand and ask what they're going to pay and what your responsibility is after the fact. Also, find out if your medical facility is a for-profit or a non-profit. Reason being, like it said, nonprofit hospitals are required by law to offer financial assistance programs and have payment plan options that oftentimes don't have interest on them. Some of them do, but majority of them don't have interest on the payment plans. So call ahead of time and ask and see, okay, is this medical facility going to work with me if I can't pay the $6,000 out of pocket, the day after I get out of the hospital? So if you can, obviously this doesn't work in emergency situations, but if you can ahead of time, find out what your cost is so you can plan ahead. That's a really good decision. So I mentioned already that we have an entire guide that's attached here on credit reports. I'm sure there's plenty of questions. I see that there's already a ton of questions in the questions box, and I think some of them are about credit reports. Yeah, they are. So if you are interested in learning more about credit reports in general and scores, we have an entire webinar. It's almost 40 minutes long. I gave it during National Consumer Protection Week in March. It goes over what you should be looking for in your credit reports, why it's important to look at them. It goes over what goes into a score, how you can improve your score, all that good stuff. If you're interested, you can go to our YouTube page and watch this. We also give this presentation in person. So if you're interested in having us come to a school, a community center, whatever, and just interested in learning more about credit reports, we can do this in person too. Call us. This is why we have this guide. We license a good amount of credit related businesses, and we want people to know about their credit. Get to know your credit very well, what's on it, what shouldn't be on it. A lot of people don't realize how much information is on there, like public records or inquiries, and how much of your personal identifying information actually shows up on there. So give us a call if you have any questions, and we can, if we know the answer, we'll give you the answer. If we don't know the answer, we'll look for one for you. And I mentioned this already. If you want a presentation on credit reports or something related to that, you can go to the request a presentation button on our website, and it takes you to this page. It's all an online form that you can fill out, and it'll come directly to us. We're at our end time here. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you learned something.